I want to welcome everyone to our next installment of the Sunday Sit Down. Joining us today is Dr. Jorea Marple, the State Superintendent of Schools in West Virginia. Dr. Marple's been in her position for about a month now?
Since first day of March.
Yeah, so about a month as we air, and I want to thank you for joining us and to talk a little bit about the state of education in West Virginia. Okay, so I said you've been here as we air for about a month now, and so you've had a little bit of time to kind of get your feet wet as superintendent. You've been also at the Department of Education for 5 years. What do you see as the single biggest priority for education in the state's public schools?
Education is a complex endeavor. So to single just one thing, when there are parallel items of importance, would be very difficult to do. You know, we started on an absolutely wonderful journey in West Virginia about 5 years ago, really recognizing that we needed to change what we taught in the classroom and how we taught if we were going to prepare our children for this very complex world. So we built a foundation for this journey by bringing in thousands of teachers, analyzing the curriculum and the content standards, raising the depth of knowledge. This is a long way around to answer your question. Raising the depth of knowledge of what we teach and beginning the professional development for our teachers to teach in these more rigorous content standards and objectives. So we built the foundation. We structured a new assessment to really say clearly to the public, we know we're not performing where we need to be, just as states are not performing all around the country where they need to be. But first and foremost is now we have a foundation to drive the work from. So when we talk about the priorities that are facing us now, there are several. And the first is that we have to work harder to personalize the learning opportunities for our children, because we have 280,000 children. They all have unique talents and unique needs. So we have to provide them with a holistic curriculum, one that our community supports, so that we value the arts, foreign language, science, and technology, because they all have impact on how well our children do in those core subjects that are so valued, of math and reading. So providing structures that allow our teachers to personalize is a top priority. And with that means we have to invest in the power of technology, and we have to fund technology. So all of our students are in all of our classrooms, not just some of them, with technology on a one-to-one basis. That's one priority. Second priority, I'm not just going to give you one, you can tell from now. Okay, the second priority is that we have to elevate the respect and admiration for teachers and the whole educational community, because there's no tougher job. And I challenge anyone to go in today's classrooms for 6 hours a day and develop engaging interactive lessons. It's a tough job. And in West Virginia, it's a priority to maintain and attract quality teachers. We have over 50% of our teachers today can retire, and we do not have teachers coming in and moving into the profession. And we're 47th in pay in West Virginia. So the second priority, and they're parallel again, is to elevate the respect for our teachers and communicate to our public they have to support our teachers by providing the salaries they need and the resources they need. The third priority is that we have to give our teachers more flexibility to teach, along with high levels of accountability. We have changed policy and laws that are interfering with that. And then the fourth priority, and there are 4 priorities once we have this foundation, is to communicate to everybody, whether you're a reporter, or whether you're a lawyer, or whether you're a doctor, or whether you're a parent, you're in this journey with us. And what you do or don't do makes a difference in terms of our success. Because the issues that our children are facing today, didn't all occur within the school setting. Most of them are outside the school setting. So we all have a role in that. So that's a long-winded answer to say that there are 4 priorities that we have to all focus.
Let's focus real quick on testing results. The state, West Virginia, still lags behind on the nation's report card through the NAEP testing, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is the only standardized test given in all states. In 2009, 8th graders in West Virginia had an average NAEP score of 255, NAEP reading score of 255, excuse me, compared to 262 is the national average. In math, those same 8th graders averaged 270 compared to 282 nationally. Why do we continue to lag in our NAEP scores, and what can be done to fix that you know, as for our children?
Yeah, I think that's why I gave you a long-winded answer to begin with, is that we have recognized that our children are not functioning, are not performing where they need to perform. And so that's why we've restructured what we teach and how we teach in the classroom, and that's why those 4 areas of priority, the 4 priority areas are so important. You know, we live in a state with a high level of poverty, and poverty does have an impact on performance in schools. We have a poverty, long-term poverty results in children coming to school that have what they call chronic stress, and when you have chronic stress, it's very difficult for you to focus. And that's why that 4th priority is so important, that as a community, for children living in poverty, we have to make sure that we accept our responsibility, that we have to help help and support them to be well when they come to school, and that they live in safe and supportive homes. So building the community support for allowing our children to be ready to school is something that is very important. But you know, we've thoroughly recognized that we're not performing where we need to perform, and fixing it is not it's not a tomorrow fix. It's going to take a decade of really hard work by everybody.
What is those test scores as they are now, what does that mean for students as they come out of high school and enter the college realm or go into the workforce?
Well, that means that if in terms of it on an individual basis, if students are not performing at the level that they are college and career ready, let's just talk about our West Test 2 that is given in the 11th grade, and we know the performance on that assessment.
Actually,
we
my
have
next question.
Right. We have a high percentage of our students who are not ready, and that's why we're on this journey. And that's why you have, at the higher education level, you have many students who graduate from high school who have to take remedial courses. So to that end, I mean, we're putting in structures that change that. That with our West Test 2, if you do not reach the level of mastery and your other indicators in your school say you're not ready for taking math in college or math or performing well in your English classes, then you're going to be required to take a transition course at the 12th grade level to become more ready.
How will that transition course work? I mean, just some of the numbers that I was looking at. 64% of well, these were broken down by minorities and non-minorities. 65% of West Virginia students in the 11th grade scored below mastery in reading and language arts. What is an acceptable number from the State Department of Education standpoint? Obviously, 0.
We want all students to be at mastery.
But you know, where do you see that in 5 years? That 65% coming.
What we want to see every year, and what we value in West Virginia, is improvement. Okay, and so we want to see a continual process of more and more students reaching mastery and being ready, being college and career ready. And we want to communicate that we all have a role and a duty in this. You know, one of the major problems that we face in West Virginia is attendance. And so if a child's not at school, then we don't have a shot at improving performance. So that's why it's so important, that 4th priority, that parents understand that and support the notion that the child has to be in school, and that they have to constantly encourage and have high expectations for their children to perform.
I think this question will kind of tie in with one of the answers that you had just a minute ago, but in too many of our state's public schools, minority students don't do as well as non-minorities. In the West test given last spring, 64% of white 11th graders scored below mastering in reading and language arts, but for African American students, that was 78%. Other subjects have similar gaps.
Sure.
Why is that? And again, what are some of the things? Is there anything other than what maybe you've already mentioned that is being done to try to tackle that issue?
I think that, let's go back to those 4 priorities, is personalizing the learning experience for the children, to be able to determine areas of interest and actively engage those children, all children. You know, that's why it's so important that we begin to build what I call a holistic curriculum, so that we make sure that the interest and needs of all children are met, and that we provide instruction in relevant ways that continue to engage children, so that art, music, dance, drama, physical activity are all things that we know address the problems that so often face minority populations and populations that live in poverty, because it gets them engaged, it gets them interest, and then the performance level increases. And also this thing of getting the community and the parents involved in setting the expectation and the standards for their children is of very high importance.
In this day and age, how, maybe as compared to 30 years ago, how important or how much more important is parental involvement in the education process?
It's always been of high importance, and certainly as things become more complex in this world, and children are not only thinking about how do they live in a depressed economy or living in poverty, they're also in a heartbeat know what's going on in Libya or Afghanistan, or know what's happening in Japan, and the level of anxiety that is created in children makes it even more difficult to have them focus on academics during the day. You know, you're not old enough to remember this, but you know, I remember the panic about a nuclear bomb. It is similar to the panic that children feel when they don't feel like they're in a safe environment. This morning on NPR, there was a story about a school district where veterans volunteer every morning and every evening to make sure that the children are able to safely walk home and safely come to school. So, you know, the environment that children find themselves in today makes it even more difficult to do what we need to do in education.
Well, maybe as a follow-up to that, as a parent of 2 school-age children, it doesn't seem with the schedule that most teachers are on to get the content in, to stay up with their curriculum, that if you have a child who starts to fall behind even slightly, teachers don't have a lot of time to stop and go back and try to reteach. Parents in that sense, what role should they be taking in not even so much in the safe, having this good environment for learning, but just in helping their children to not only stay up, but to even try to get ahead a little bit?
Got a great site that we're developing with educators all across this country. It's called Learn 21. And Learn 21 is based upon the premise that learning must be 24/7. It's just not what happens in the school building. And it's also a way that as a parent sees that that child isn't understanding a concept or is having difficulty, we're building vast resources in each of the content areas. So let's say your son is in high school and is in Algebra 1, and he goes to school and he didn't understand the presentation of whatever concept, differentiated equations or whatever it was. You can go to this site, and every objective that we're teaching in Algebra 1, a student can click on there and they can hear and see a teacher re-explain that concept and give them some practice work to do around it. But we're building this site for pre-K through 12 in math, science, and social studies, We're going to do the arts. We're going to do career courses, so that students and parents and teachers in the school may use this to support learning. Obviously, with the caveat is you have to have the technology, you have to have the bandwidth to be able to access it. But with that, that's why the power of technology is so important to meeting the needs of all children. It will allow us to better address the individual skill deficiencies that occur, or even advancing the student who's ready to go on to the next subject through the power of technology. So Learn 21, go to the department site, click on that button, whether you have a pre-K or you have a 12th grader, and it will provide you with support you need.
As a longtime educator, when you see now children can, instead of maybe sitting at home with their book and struggling with that concept and trying to understand exactly what it means, how much of an advantage, particularly for children today who are, excuse me, growing up in the, on-demand environment, to be able to see an educator explain that? Does that enhance the learning process much more than what it was 20, 30 years ago?
Absolutely. I mean, we live in an age in which technology is transforming, and it's also a tool that will allow us to personalize learning the way that we've never been able to do it. Okay, you have to think about a high school teacher with 125 students when we say personalize the learning to meet the needs. Technology is that fundamental tool. And in any school or in any classroom, when you don't have individual access, they're at a great disadvantage. So that's something that our community has to come to grips with, has to support, and the members of our legislature have to fund.
How well does West Virginia do with technology in the public schools? Obviously, border counties like Ohio, larger counties, Kanawha, Cabell, are fairly well wired in their school systems and have broadband capabilities. But how do the rural counties in our state compete with that disadvantage?
All of our schools have internet access, but not necessarily at the speed and the level that we want. The BTOP, the federal grant that we've received from West Virginia, will improve that. So once we have this highway built, not only it's built to our schools, but once we have the speed significantly increased, and once we have this internet highway to the community, then the next, it's also a concurrent step, is we have to have the hardware in the school, and we have to have the technical support. I don't know about you, but when my computer isn't working, it's very frustrating. But if I'm in front of a classroom and everything's down, so when we talk about using the power of technology, we have to have technology integration specialists, system specialists. We have to have the bandwidth, and we have to have the hardware to make it work.
Much of an advantage up in Hancock County, two fourth-grade classes in Hancock County actually use iPads in their classroom.
Oh,
now.
wonderful!
How much? What is the advantage for those students?
There's been a lot of research, particularly on poverty students and the use of technology, as well as incorporating the arts, and it helps our children focus, and they're going to perform better. We actually made a presentation to the legislature. It's a great concern, this equity of access that we're facing in our state. Some classrooms have, as you say, slates in every classroom or iPads. Some schools have are almost to one-to-one access for laptops for all their students. So we as a community have to address this, because we don't want to get in a situation where some of our students have this powerful tool and some do not. And even, in a very short period of time, textbook companies will not be producing paper textbooks. They will be producing apps or PDF files, so that we'll be retrieving it through technology, and we have to be ready for that it's occurring now, and in a few years it'll be pervasive.
You mentioned earlier truancy, dropout rates. What can be done at the state level or at the county level to better address truancy, and should parents be held more accountable? Senator Eric Wells has been talking about legislation to possibly revoke parents' driver's license if students don't go to school. What are your thoughts on those type of measures?
Well, I think I think it is a complex problem that requires lots of things to fix it. It requires that in our schools that we have engaging and interactive learning going on, and that it's interesting, so that you're creating a situation where children really want to be, and that we personalized it to be able to address their talents and their needs, which is an expensive proposition to do, but that's a fundamental step that has to be in place, that there's a high level of interest and engaging instruction that's going on in the classroom. Parents need to encourage and expect their children to be in school, and the community needs to encourage and support it. And the community has to build the structures of support when there are real reasons why that parent can't get that child to school that day, whether it's health reasons, unmet health reasons, and things like this. But it is a community effort. I'm not always sure that punishment is the solution.
So I take it you don't agree with revoking driver's license?
I always worry how those parents will be able to get the food that they need to meet their children's needs on a daily basis. I think it is establishing expectations and encouragements. You know, we already have a system in place. When it works, that if a student misses more than 10 days, has 10 days unexcused absence, the parent is notified, and we can take them to magistrate court, and they can impose a fine. That's a very difficult process to do.
We've had that happen several times in
very
Marshall
difficult.
County. If they're not getting that support at home, though, do you believe classroom teachers today feel they have the freedom, maybe the flexibility to try to give it at school?
Well, that's one of the 4 priorities, is making sure that we don't have any policies and laws that impede giving that teacher the flexibility to be able to spend time with the student on a one-to-one basis, to be an advocate for the student, to listen to what that student has to say, and building, again, another community issue. We don't have enough counselors. We don't have enough school psychologists. We don't have enough nurses. And these are all fundamental supports for a healthy and well child. And so as a community, the more the community comes to the realization that if we want all these things to work well in our school, and we want children to be well and healthy, then we have to build a school of today, which includes counselors, nurses, psychologists, foreign language teachers, art teachers, music teachers, more physical activity, more technology. Because if we don't work, if public education doesn't work, then everything around it doesn't work so well. We won't be so open for business. We won't be, poverty will increase. So the core, and that's why our Constitution in West Virginia and the people who framed our Constitution said it's a priority.
Do you believe that, well, let me rephrase that. What is the difference today from, you mentioned school counselors, school nurses. Are they in less proportion today to students than maybe they were 10, 20 years ago? Or, I don't recall when I was in school that they're, having a shortage of counselors in Montague County schools. But is it, is the number still pretty good, or is it just the changing demands of education today?
I think that it's a little, I really think the fact that we are living in this really complex world, and children are coming to school with more and more issues that are outside the school environment, that the need for these individuals has really enhanced. I was in a school day before yesterday where I was talking to a full-time nurse who's been assigned to that school because of medical needs of specific children in that school. She has to do, I think, trach replacement, something every day regarding a trach for a student. So the good news is the children are in school, okay? And within my lifetime, even, not all children went to school, but now they do. Even though we have attendance problems, all children go to school. And so because all children go to school, we want all children to be successful, we have to build this network of complete support for them.
Talked a little bit earlier about economically disadvantaged students. What are your thoughts on students who come from single-parent families? That obviously those numbers are growing and have been growing. Do the parents themselves need more help from the school system with some of the responsibilities that they have with the children at home with the learning? And do you see the students needing any additional support either in the classroom or possibly socially?
Being a parent, whether you're a parent in a single family environment or you have both parents, it's a tough job. Any way that you slice it, it's really tough. And so I think all parents need support. And one of the things that we're doing with our educators is developing a website for parents, a parent education and resource website where they can go and get their questions answered and find resources and support for them. So I'm sure it's difficult to be a single parent. It's difficult to be a parent, period. So, and they do need support, and we need to be providing it. And that's, again, going back to having counselors in the school that have time to talk to the parents, whether they're a single parent or not, and having school nurses there that can assist the parents. So, education is a complete picture.
Just a quick follow-up to that. My daughter has several students in her class, single-parent families, and they have a school counselor in her elementary school. They have a group called the Banana Splits where they meet for the children from split families. How important is that in those children's learning process to be able to talk about their concerns and to talk about their fears and their any problems they might be having at home with a registered school counselor or certified school counselor? It
is so important. Having an opportunity for students to have voice about the issues they have, and having someone who has the time to say, how's it going? What happened last night? How can I help you? Is really important. But it's really very difficult for a classroom teacher who, if you're secondary, I have 125 or I have 25, that, and I taught on Monday in a school, and it is really tough to have that time to individually meet with a child as a classroom teacher to discuss any personal or issues that they're facing. That's why you have to have a team approach in a school. That doesn't mean that teachers don't every day, all day long, talk to students individually, but you've got to have that counselor, you've got to have that supportive principal, and you've got to have the nurses.
Maybe a classroom-specific question. You mentioned earlier, half of the state's teachers either are eligible for retirement or soon will be.
Are eligible
For retirement now, correct. As more slots become available, more teacher positions are open, do you see any need for the state to look at alternative certification teachers, maybe someone who has a degree in phys ed and gets a teaching certificate teaching math, or if they're qualified in that subject area, obviously. What benefit or possible downfalls do you see with that?
I don't think that is a solution. I think that you can have some alternate pathways to become highly qualified, okay? But that's the key. We really need individuals in our classroom who have a high level of content knowledge, but also have a high level of knowledge about how you deliver the instruction. You have a lot of people who may have a lot of content knowledge but don't have a clue about how you actually teach in engaging ways and in small groups and use the resources and the tools that are there. The critical issue of getting highly qualified teachers is being able to have a way to attract and maintain them. I have to tell you, I'm really concerned when I have a superintendent who tells me, I know I'm going to have 59 vacancies next year that I don't have a clue how I'm going to fill. I think we're fast reaching the point that unless we address the issues of salaries, if you have all your surrounding states that are paying more than you're paying, and you want to attract the best and the brightest to replace our wonderful teachers who are retiring, then we've got to be able to do that.
Okay,
I don't have a way to make that go away.
just two last questions, and we can wrap up. Over the last year, I've talked with a number of college administrators throughout West Virginia. They've all expressed some similar concerns, some that you've touched on earlier, with students having to take remedial courses when they get to college, remedial English, remedial math. Number one, is there enough dialogue between the state level administration and the colleges so that the state public school system knows what the colleges expect out of their students when they come, particularly kind of the average run-of-the-mill students? And two, do you think the state is doing a good enough job in preparing students who want to go to college so that when they get there, they're ready? They don't need to take a remedial course.
Well, we have been actively engaged with higher ed over the past several years to look at what we teach in our classroom. So they were right at the table, and we had agreement that our content standards and objectives were not rigorous enough. And so they assisted with the redesign and the development of objectives that ensured that we have the rigor in the curriculum. And then we took another step. We asked them to be at the table to identify those objectives and mastery of those objectives that would allow children to be successful in college. And then we aligned our WEST test to it, and I think I mentioned that before. So at the 11th grade level now, with agreement of higher ed, we have said that mastery on this WEST test 2, if you don't achieve it, then that's an indicator you're probably not ready for college English and college math. But we want to look at other things. We created an index because students also take a plan test and explore test. They also have evidence in terms of classroom performance. So we created an index where all the 11th graders were going to be reviewing and that's with a commitment from higher ed. We're looking at your performance on those different indicators. And then, if we don't believe you're there, you will be required to take a college transition class in English or in math.
Okay. Last question, and this ties a little bit in with the teacher salary, but seems to be kind of on a lot of people's minds. Do you favor collective bargaining for public school employees?
I favor teachers being active participants in their teacher organizations. Teachers are a key stakeholder in this, and I have no problems with collective bargaining because I believe teachers are part of our team and that they need to be at the table as we determine what are the resources they need, what are the supports they need, and so that we together as a community can address them.
And maybe just lastly, and I know I said that was the last question, but if you had to give a grade right now to the state's public school system, what would your grade be?
Well, I'm not a big person into grades, and I think it varies from place to place.
You were a teacher at one time, right?
I am a teacher. I was a teacher, but what I'm looking toward is improvement. Okay, and I think we do a good job in trying to educate all children. I don't think that all of our stakeholders have the level of commitment they need.
Who doesn't have that level of commitment?
Well, I think in terms of if we need technology, and we all agree we do, then all of us have to figure out how we get it. Okay?
So you need the money.
We need the money to do that. So I'm
So
not
the
sure.
legislature needs
I'm
to
not sure
do something.
placing a grade in public education is of any use versus placing a grade. Should we place a grade on legislators and how they performed in this session? Should we place a grade on our healthcare industry? Or should we place a grade on our business industry? Because all these impact how we do in public education. So I think if we're giving grades out, we've got to grade everybody, okay? Because what they do or don't do impacts how successful we are in school. So if I'm a classroom teacher and you haven't given me the technology and you haven't given me the time and you haven't given me the resources to do what I need to do, other people are part of that.
Thank you very much.